See you Wednesday.
Bye. Oh.
What? Proverbs 18, verse 22.
He who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord.
What'd you say?
Don't forget the patience part, Josh. That's from another verse.
Okay, what does the word find indicate?
Stumble upon.
Happened upon.
What's that indicate? You went looking, right?
Fine.
I mean, I guess you could happen on one, but generally you go looking for one, right? Along about the time you get to be 16, 17, 18. I mean, did she just show up at the door and say, we're getting married?
Yeah,
or
pretty
did you
much.
court her?
Pretty much.
How did that work? Oh, is that what I wondered what happened to you.
Yes, dear.
Okay, so how's the Bible say the process should work? What's the first thing the Bible says about getting married?
Warning, warning, warning.
Well, the first thing it says about getting married is that it is not good for you to be alone. In Genesis chapter 1. Okay.
Then after you get married, you realize that it is good to be alone.
Chris, smack him.
Give me the high sign before you throw something.
Okay.
So you're challenging God's word.
No, sir. No, sir. I'm just.
I didn't think so.
I'm challenging my wife's word until we get home.
You know, it's probably good that Jason and Jerry are separated. Maybe I ought to separate you two. Okay, so it's not good to be alone. Is there any evidence of that?
Me.
Me? Not trying to beat up on the Catholics, but you know they have this thing about priests not being married. And who's always making the news about sexual crimes? It's not good for human beings to be alone. We were made to fellowship. We were made to have a mate, to have a husband and a wife. And it says, now remember, Solomon is writing Proverbs to his son. Okay? So it doesn't mean it is good to find a wife and not good to find a husband. He's writing it to his son, and he's telling his son, I want you to find a good wife.
You're welcome.
But it applies just as well to women being alone and needing a husband. Especially back in this society. Okay, so after we establish that it's good to be married and probably best to be married, how should the process work?
We're not sure.
Well, I think I ought to be able to pick the husband for my daughters. That's how I think it should work.
If that's the case, there never would be one.
I second
Get a
that.
second that one. Now, back when I was 18, I didn't care for that process very much. But think about it now. Should a 16, 17, 18-year-old person be making the biggest decision of their life on their own?
No.
What are the chances this is going to work out well? Zero. What?
I said, we've been married 9 years.
Where is it?
Married 10.
Where is
But you know, there ought to be some mature input into it. There ought to be, I don't know what your home life was like, but if your mom and dad had a really good marriage and they were good examples, you had a good foundation to start on. A lot of times that's not the case. Now, what's the Bible say about it? The Bible says, be ye not unequally yoked. What's that mean? What's that mean?
Don't be rude.
You're all married. You don't know what that means? I guess you all just lucked into that. What's it mean to not be unequally yoked?
Make sure you pick somebody that's gonna pull their share.
Say again?
Make sure you pick somebody that's gonna pull their share, because if you're doing all the work, or they are doing all the work, it's not gonna come out very good.
Okay, that brings up the word help meet. You're supposed to help each other. You're supposed to assist each other. You really should.
Well, I thought she was just supposed to help me.
No.
That's why she was made, right?
Josh, you are saying.
If God has any input into the process, He's going to pick somebody with strengths that complement my weaknesses, and He's going to give her my strengths that complement her weakness. My wife has strengths that I depend on. She also has weaknesses that I can supplement, that I can assist. God only knows where she'd be if I wasn't balancing the checkbook. She told somebody one time, she said, internet banking has saved my marriage. He walked into the post office one time and handed me 3 checkbooks, 90 checks, and said, I've written these, and they span like 6 months. And and I'm standing there, and some guy standing behind her, his eyes got real big. And I think he was about to pick up her body. But and I'm standing there like, how you write 90 checks and I don't have any idea? How am it? Well, I learned pretty quickly to check my account over the internet a couple times a week. And so I had been keeping up with it, but it's just not one of her strengths. Okay. Me, I stand there at the cash register and do the balance before I put the checkbook away. I don't put it back in my pocket until I know what the balance is. Her, she just hands them to me every once in a while. I guess she figures if we have checks, we must have money. So. But it's just an example of how one of her weaknesses is supplemented by one of my strengths. And there are things that I am horrible at that she keeps going. So yeah, what Jason said was, like 2 oxen yoke, they help each other. What else does it mean then? What does the farmer do when he puts 2 oxen together? He doesn't put a big strong one and a weak young calf together. Okay? He matches 2 that can work equally beside each other. Okay? How do you think it's going to work if a strong Christian with strong beliefs marries a person who doesn't go to church and who doesn't believe in God and who doesn't have any intention of ever doing it? How do you think the marriage is going to go? Not going to work. Now, they may get along during the courtship. I mean, we get along during the courtship, right? And how long should the courtship be? 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months?
50 years.
60
I vote for 6
years.
years. How long should the courtship be? Well, it ought to be long enough to where you can really see who the other person is. I mean, anybody can behave for 6 weeks. I remember when Janice and I were dating, I gave up hunting, I gave up fishing. All I wanted to do was be at her house when I got off work. And we courted and we went out to eat. And, we got married and went on the honeymoon. And the first thing I did when I got back from the honeymoon was get out my rifle and go squirrel hunting. You know, turn to courtship. It was all about her, all about her, all about her. I finally caught her. And then I got out my fishing poles and my rifle, and I went back to being who Bill Bitter was. Well, we dated for about 1.5 years, and you know, there toward the end, I started squirrel hunting again a little bit. She started to see who I really was toward the end of it all. But if that would have only lasted for 6 weeks, she wouldn't have had a clue who I was. So, in the Jewish society, the courtship had to be for 1 year. And actually, they didn't live together at night, but the girl in the Jewish society actually went over to the house first thing in the morning, fixed breakfast, cleaned the house, did everything a wife would do, fixed supper, and as soon as they ate supper, she went back to her house and stayed with her mom and dad, and she did that for 1 year. So you could find out if she could cook, you could find out
You can do trade-ins.
well, you got to know each other. You got to, it wasn't just right at the last minute you get married, and after the honeymoon you get home and find out the only thing she can do is warm up tomato soup. It's a little late then to be complaining about the fact that she can't cook. Should have known that before. There should be this time to find out if, you know, I found out along the way that she would cook my squirrels for me and my rabbits and whatever. She was a farm girl. I was from a farm. We had likenesses. We found out that neither one of us could bowl. You know, in 1.5 years, you find out something about the other person. And you find out whether you're going to be in conflict for all that time or whether you're going to like each other and enjoy each other all that time. It shouldn't be 6 weeks. This is a decision that is supposed to be settled for the rest of your life. And if you don't look for somebody who is compatible with you, you're going to have a war for the rest of your life. And shouldn't do that. That's especially with respect to religion, because if one believes in God and one doesn't, what are the chances of, it's called missionary dating, what are the chances of the believer converting the unbeliever? What do you think the chances are? What does stats say?
The unbeliever will make the believer not believe.
The unbeliever will make the believer not believe?
Yeah, after time.
Okay.
After time. Not you're going to, but after time.
5% of the time the believer is converted. The unbeliever is converted. 5% of the time. 50% of the time the believer is unconverted. In order to just have peace, the believer stops going to church. 50% of the time they continue going to church, and 75% of them end up getting a divorce. You don't date, you don't court, and you don't marry an unbeliever if you have a strong faith in God. You find somebody who believes like you do. And if you don't do that, you're going to settle in for war, because every time you get up and go to church, the spouse is going to feel cheated and going to feel condemned, because he's going to think, or she's going to think that, well, they think they're better than I am. Now, what are the consequences of not getting married?
Happiness.
Clean house.
Well, it would be America as we see it today.
Don't try to pat her. Looks like you're opening the can of tomatoes.
When I was going to school, the big fear was that at some point in time, the marriage situation in America would exceed 50-50. That 50% would be traditional marriages, and then 50% would be non-traditional marriages. Now it's 72. People are living together, people are having children as single parents, and what's it done to society? What's it done to the United States? If you're a teacher in school, how stable are those kids?
Not very.
How do those kids identify? How does a young man with a single mother know what a father is supposed to be? How does a young girl with a single father know what a mother is supposed to be? How a mother is supposed to act? How are they going to pattern themselves and establish themselves to know what the correct thing is in a single parent household? That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough because women don't make great fathers, and fathers for sure don't make great mothers. And you just have to do the best you can, and hopefully you're in a society of believers and the men can take over and help your son, or the women can take over and help your daughter. And in my case, if I had 2 daughters and didn't have a wife, some of the women could take over and maybe give them an example of what a mother's supposed to act like and what a woman's supposed to act like, what a wife's supposed to act like. Otherwise, how do they have a clue? They don't have that example to follow. They don't have that pattern to go by. Okay? So, marriage is good. But marriage should, in America, when we go out looking for a wife, what are we looking for?
Should we tell the truth?
You're looking at the face.
Go ahead, Justin.
Looking at the face. You're looking at the face. Hollywood has established that the most important thing in the world is to have a good-looking wife, to have a trophy wife. Amen? That's what Hollywood says. How are they doing? How are the people in Hollywood doing? Are they any kind of example that we're supposed to follow?
They're the ones bringing the average down.
Next time you're at the grocery store and there's a line, go ahead and read the front of the tabloids and see how Hollywood's doing. They're not doing real great.
I know I won't turn on the radio now. Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert divorced, and it's nothing but Miranda Lambert all over the radio. That's just horrible.
Yeah.
Well, he should have got smart to start with, because every one of her number ones was some man bashing song. He should have got a clue.
I like her.
Okay, getting back to the But, Hollywood says go out and find the cutest girl you can find. Go out and find the handsomest man with the 6-pack abs and the flat stomach.
Used to have.
Go after the
Now,
lady.
I don't have a 6-pack anymore. I went up to a keg.
Yeah, me too. It's kind of like a case. But it's all about looks. It's all about money. It's all about who's cool. And how long does that last? Well, I lost my fat belly about 30, and it got worse. It went downhill from there. When I got married, I weighed 145 pounds. Now I weigh 230.
Yeah, they say the statistics say once you get married, you start to get fat and you start to lose your hair.
That's because most men can't.
It's women's fault.
My mom says it's happy fat.
See, I sacrifice it all for my wife.
But the point is, everything that Hollywood says to look for is fleeting quickly. I mean, if you don't think so, go look at your wedding picture and compare it to the mirror, and tell me how things are going physically.
That's the kids' fault.
But you find out after about 7 or 8 or 9 years that Hollywood's definition of love is not God's definition of love.
No.
And all that warm and fuzzy, that's nice, but at some point in time, you want comfortable, and you want dependable, and you want something that you can stake the rest of your life on. You don't want to have to wander around, wondering how this thing's going to end up. It needs to come to a point. Where you are know that you're in good shape, that things are going to go well for you. Any comments? I mean, think about it. If I was picking my my daughter's husband, I wouldn't want ugly grandkids. I wouldn't pick the ugliest guy in the world. I wouldn't pick the fattest guy in the world because he's probably lazy. I wouldn't pick somebody who didn't want to work because I don't want to feed them for the rest of my life. I wouldn't make decisions solely based on people's appearance. I'd make decisions based on, did the kid get an education? Did he finish high school? Has he ever had a job? Is he respectful? Is he going to be a good example for what I want my grandkids to be? Is he going to establish a home for them and reliability for them? I'm not going to pick the biggest jerk on the block, but a 16-year-old might. Everybody wants to date the quarterback. Have you ever gone to the class reunion 25 years and looked at what the quarterback turned out to be? You remember that? You remember that song? I thank God for unanswered prayers. Well, I went to my 25th class reunion, and that's the last one I'm ever going to. But I went to my 25th class reunion, and I thank God that my first crush did not become my wife. And I thank God that my second crush didn't become my wife. And those are the only two crushes I had in high school. It's a search, and it needs to be based on something other than what Hollywood says it's supposed to be. Because those things that Hollywood holds up and says are important, they don't last. They don't last for the lifetime of the marriage.
I know when Abby told me her birthday was November 16th, I told her that was deer season, she was on her own. She was okay with that, so it worked out pretty good.
Equally young.
So we celebrate our birthday about a week before.
Yeah.
Our wedding was opening day.
All mine.
Yeah.
Okay, 23.
A poor man pleads for mercy, but a rich man answers harshly.
What's going on there? A poor man pleads for mercy, but a rich man answers harshly. What else has a poor man got? If he's in court and they gave him a public defender, what are his chances? Plead for mercy. Public defenders are not public defenders because they're really good at what they do. Usually they're forced into it, like in Orange County. They make the lawyers take turns being public defenders. They don't want to do it. You're not going to get paid. They know they're not going to get paid, and so they don't go out there and beat the bushes and give you the best you can. A rich man, on the other hand, he's got the money to buy anything he wants and to get anything he wants, and so he can be arrogant and he can answer harshly. He can talk back to the judge, but the poor man, he's totally at that judge's mercy because he doesn't have anything better to stand in his stead. Okay? That's the way the world works. It's not the way heaven works. That's not the way the kingdom works. But it is the way the world works. It's just a statement of fact. Poor people are at the mercy of the rich people. Are they not? You think any rich man ever got rich by not exploiting the poor? I'll give you an example. Remember back when the last minimum wage was raised, back 2010 or something, they raised the minimum wage up to $7.75 or $7.50 or what is it now?
7.25.
Okay. One of the islands out in the Pacific that are our possession and are under the Minimum Wage Act was exempted. Do you know why it was exempted? Because that's where Nancy Pelosi's tuning canning factory was, and they were only paying those people $4 an hour. And so they exempted that island so that he wouldn't have to pay $7.75 an hour. Rich, powerful people manipulate poor people to get what they want. Rich. And that's all there is to it. Now, I know a couple millionaires that are just as generous and just as giving people as I've ever met. But they're the only two I've ever heard of. And I'm sure there are more, but percentage-wise, rich people take advantage of poor people. It's just all there is to it. And the last one real quick.
A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother.
Okay. You ever heard the saying, too many cooks spoil the soup? Sometimes you can have too much help. My grandpa used to say, when it's all said and done, and when you look back over your life, you're going to be able to count your real friends on one hand. What my grandpa used to say. I used to think he was crazy. And now I'm 70 years old and he's pretty smart. There's a lot of people who are friendly. I'm friendly with a lot of people. But who do you know that's going to stand beside you no matter what? No matter what happens. When it all falls apart, when the whole thing falls apart, how many friends do you know are going to be there and visit you in jail on Thursday night in Paoli and not believe the newspapers?
Is it
Amen?
every Thursday?
I'm only on those
bail
days.
you out is what I'm talking about.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
We're going to be in there with you.
Next week we're going to start looking at verses on communion, and if Jerry and Jason, next time Jerry and Jason are in the class, we're going to finish up the evolution of saints.